Starts with that main event, Dominic. Champion versus champion. The fourth title unification bout in UFC heavyweight history. Francis Ngannou looks to make the first defense of his title against potentially his toughest test that he'll ever face in Ciryl Gane. And the odds kind of illustrate that.
Yeah.
So, Dominic, where to start with this one? I mean, there is a big story going on beyond the fight, behind the scenes. Ngannou's contract negotiations are kind of a mess with the UFC. And really, this all starts with pretty much Ngannou wins the belt.
Mm-hmm.
He goes home to Cameroon, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be with family, to, obviously show off the
Celebrate.
belt. Yeah,
Yep.
Says the UFC comes to him with the fight between him and Derek Lewis, which, by the way, only happened because John Jones' negotiations kind of fell through.
True.
So they come to Ngannou and they say, we want you to headline with Derek Lewis in August. Ngannou says he can't be ready on that date, but that he could do September. The UFC, without really letting him know, decide to just do an interim belt instead. Ciryl Gane gets put in to fight Francis or Derek Lewis. And that's kind of where this all started. And really, you can even go back further to the fact that Ciryl Gane is trained by the very coach that brought Francis Ngannou to the highest level. And then Ngannou left. And now him and that coach does not have a lot of nice things to say about Ngannou.
Not at all.
And you see the clip backstage at UFC 269 or 268.
That video's cold.
When Ngannou just walks past them, and you can see that they're just, Gane, man.
He's like so nice. He's like,
he's kind of gotten dragged into the middle of all this.
I know, dude.
And Ngannou did later say, he's like, I have no ill will towards Gane, but he was with that coach, and I'm not gonna acknowledge
him. Yeah.
So this has really gone off the rails. I mean, then Dana White's taking a lot of shots at Francis Ngannou's management.
Mm-hmm.
Ngannou's saying that he refuses to come to any sort of middle ground in terms of he wants to box, and he doesn't want to be making. He wants to make more than his 500 or 600,000 he's been making per fight. And he ultimately wants opportunities to box. And he thinks that can be done under the UFC's umbrella, but he's refusing to sort of sway on that. There's actually a great video that details all of this that MMA On Point just put out. Highly recommend everybody go check it out because it really does the timeline justice of showing kind of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where we're at right now. Now you have him looking to defend against Ciryl Gane, who's the interim champion. We haven't seen Ngannou in 10 months. If Ngannou wins, the contract is really weird because it sounds like if he wins his I don't know how it works.
I saw something about like it extends it 1 year or 3 fights.
Yeah, it's like he could sit out, basically win or lose here. I think he could sit out a whole nother year and then leave.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know that because the UFC with their contracts, if you're a champion holding the belt, typically it extends.
Right.
Like a champion who currently holds the belt, they usually put themselves in a situation where they can't leave.
Exactly.
With the belt.
Unless you vacate. Right.
Yes. So I don't know how his contract works, but it looks like it's coming up. He's got like one fight left.
Yeah.
Who knows if that'll even happen. But Dominic, we just laid a lot out there, and none of it really involves the actual X's and O's itself.
Ooh.
So I think the biggest question going in is, how does all of this affect the fight itself? How does it affect the challenger, Ciryl Gane, but more importantly, how heavy does it weigh on the champion, Francis Ngannou?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this personally, but I feel like, this fight week in specific, and I'm not making accusations, and it could just be like how I'm feeling, but I almost feel like Ciryl Gane is the champion already in terms of like the marketing and the way
Really?
everything's going. I don't know. It's weird. And then you mentioned all of this drama that they've trained together, they've sparred together. There's footage of it. The coaching, how Francis left to come here to the States. He now trains with Extreme Couture and Eric Nixick, who's just been an incredible coach the past couple of years. That gym's amazing. But and then you look at this fight. There's so much pressure here for Francis Ngannou because of all of this drama that is out into the public, and you've got the president Dana White talking about you all the time, and this and that, and there's so much tension. There's so much tension in this fight. Francis with the UFC, Francis and Gane, Francis and the coach. There's so many factors here that make it that much more exciting to me. And don't get me wrong, there's pressure on Ciryl Gane here too. I mean, a lot of people. I'm not saying people dislike Gane, but a lot of people hated, including us. We did not like that they made that interim title fight, at least so quickly. Because, I mean, Francis won the belt in March. They did an interim fight in August. That's 3 months in between, or 4 months, whatever my math is. So, I love Ciryl Gane just as much as the next person, but this feels like just a legitimate title defense for Francis to me. I view Gane as the number one contender. He just so happens to have that interim strap. So he has this pressure to live up to, hey, I've got this interim strap. I'm not just some other guy. I'm not some pushover, and he can come out here and make a statement, beat the most dangerous man potentially in UFC history, and become the undisputed champ. There's so much tension, so much pressure on both guys. You look at the X's and O's of this fight. Gane is one of the most technically sound heavyweights we've ever seen. He may be the most talented heavyweight we've ever seen in terms of an all-around, through-and-through skill set. Francis Ngannou, the one-shot power that can shut anyone's lights off, 16 wins, 16 finishes, 5-fight win streak. And you look at that performance he had against Stipe, the leaps and bounds that it seemed that he has grown, not only in his takedown defense, but he looked more there in terms of cardio-wise. I know it only went into the second round, but still, that's a lot for Francis. He doesn't see many second rounds, so there's so many beautiful, ugly, nasty things about this fight, and that makes me so excited to see who the baddest man on the planet is.
So it seems like Ciryl Gane is almost like a proxy for the UFC in this fight. That's not how he probably wants to be perceived.
Yeah.
That's not, I'm sure that's not his intention. But in a way, this whole fight is Ngannou versus the UFC. And Ciryl Gane just so happens to be the opponent, so he's kind of the representative of the UFC. And that's where a lot of the people are probably rooting against him a decent amount. And yes, he did get that interim title fight. People thought, including us, were not happy about. So in a way, it almost feels like maybe he's getting favorable treatment, and I don't really think he is. I'm just saying that's kind of where maybe some of that distaste is coming from. But make no mistake, this is one of the riskiest bets a fighter has ever put on themselves, is what Ngannou's doing here.
Yep.
He is basically putting all his chips on the table, saying, I'm all in. If he wins this fight, it could prove to be one of the smartest decisions a fighter's ever made. But if he loses, he will have no leverage left, essentially.
Nope.
And I'm not saying that he can't still make some great money outside of the UFC, but if he loses, those whispers of a Tyson Fury boxing match goes away.
They dwindle, yes.
Why would the only reason Tyson Fury and Ngannou in any world would be put in a boxing match is because Ngannou is a UFC champion.
Yep.
Once he loses that, the value's gone because he's not the level of boxer that Tyson Fury is.
Right.
It's just putting him against the novice. That's why I'm gonna have it's gonna be hard for me to watch this fight. Like my stomach's just gonna be turning.
Yeah.
Because I'm just gonna be so nervous. This fight, our first pay-per-view that we ever covered on this show was UFC 252, which was headlined by the trilogy bout between Stipe and DC at heavyweight.
Yep.
And I stand by, if you go off of in terms of where both guys stood in their legacy and kind of what they had done up to that point, both had finished each other previously. It was like the biggest title fight in UFC history.
Yeah.
This fight feels even bigger.
It does.
In terms of just the longevity of the division, like how the future of this division, the future of UFC fighter pay relations and just relations and like this feels like this could be a huge turning point in the history of the company. It really does. I can't believe, like, maybe I'm overestimating this fight, but
no, you're not at all.
It feels like if Ngannou wins, like the amount of changes that could be seen,
yep,
potentially. But if he loses,
then when you talk about the longevity though of the division, when you look at Ciryl Gane, the first potential champion from France, and then we're talking an untapped market over there. They just legalized MMA. The UFC could crash into Paris with Ciryl Gane headlining a card as their heavyweight champion. There's so many huge stakes on the line on both sides of the octagon here, the red and blue corner. I mean, the storylines are truly endless. I haven't felt that there were so many storylines in a title fight in a very long time. I don't think any way up to this on the podcast.
Dominic, that point about Paris came out of nowhere, and yet that could have been the biggest. If this was any other title fight, any other opponent, that could be the biggest seller of the card. Is like, a potential first champion from France, new market.
Yep.
And yet I haven't heard that come up at all.
Yeah, I know.
So, like, again, it's a good thing to point out, but all eyes are on Ngannou in this matchup. And Ciryl Gane is, no doubt about it, I said this in the nosebleeds, he is the most complete product we've maybe ever seen at heavyweight.
Yeah.
Ngannou looks like he has improved leaps and bounds from the guy who fought Stipe the first time when he beat him the second time.
Yep.
He looked like a guy who could defend a takedown. He looked like he had improved cardio. He looked like he had a more developed offensive skill set. He even looked like his offensive grappling was much improved. That Ngannou that I saw on that night, I feel confident can beat anybody in the world.
I agree.
Baddest man in the world.
Yes, unquestionable.
But when it comes to Ngannou, you see him do such explosive moments, and his fights go so quick that when you try to analyze and break down him going up against a lot of opponents, but especially here with Gane, who is a guy who we've seen a lot of, even in a small, he's 10-0.
Yep.
A small sample size compared to a lot of people, but he's had a lot of fights go to decision. But he's also finished some fights in the later rounds and stuff. We've seen there's probably, I don't know what the stat is on this, but I would say the amount of time Ngannou's fought in the octagon is potentially less than Gane.
Oh, I'd say that's got to be.
Is that unquestionable?
It's got to be. It's got to be.
I'd like to know the numbers on that. I don't have them, but Ngannou's definitely fought quite a few more times, I would say, in the octagon than Gane. If you try to analyze this fight and try to break it down like we're doing, it's always going to come back to Gane. He's the more technical heavyweight. He has better skills. He is the more complete package.
Yes.
But he doesn't have the power that Francis Ngannou has. The equalizer, as you said.
Yep.
And that was the debate with the Derek Lewis fight, and it's even a bigger debate now.
Yeah.
So this fight is so up in the air for me. I don't know how it's going to go. But all I know is the outcome will be significant, and I think everybody needs to prepare for that.
Yeah, again, we've seen Gane quite literally perform damn near perfect in the octagon thus far. What was that tweet you sent? Francis has 11 fights in the UFC. They've all ended no later than the second round via stoppage. Ciryl Gane has 22 rounds in the UFC. He's won 22 rounds. I mean, this fight, man, doesn't get bigger, literally, with the weight class and just in terms of the amount of pressure, the stock of both these guys, the longevity of the division. It goes on and on and on. I cannot wait to see these two locked inside the cage with one another.